Hollywood once sold itself as perfection. Red carpets, tuxedos, gowns sparkling under blinding lights. Stars who seemed larger than life, immortal on screen, flawless in their private lives. The Dream Factory built myths, so powerful that entire generations believed them. But Paul Newman warned, don't believe the posters. They sell you something that doesn't exist. He wasn't talking about marketing tricks. He was talking about a sickness in the system itself. Behind the curtain were tyrant mothers, violent fathers, predatory idols, and egos so large they destroyed entire productions. Some stories surfaced in courtrooms and memoirs. Others lingered as whispers, kept alive by those who were there. And when Newman began to name names, the list sent chills through Hollywood. These weren't forgotten background players. These were legends, stars whose faces still beam from posters and whose films still play on our screens. What you're about to hear is not the golden dream Hollywood sold. It is the shadow it refused to show. 1. Errol Flynn, Robin Hood in the dock. Photoplay magazine called him the man every woman longs for and every man wants to be. Warner Brothers sold him as their golden ticket, and for a while he was untouchable. 2 underage girls accused Flynn of statutory assault. The news detonated across Los Angeles. The Examiner splashed the headline, Robin Hood in the dock. The case wasn't just another scandal. It was the biggest star of the decade suddenly fighting for his life in court. The trial played out like theater. The courthouse overflowed with reporters, fans, even international correspondents. Women fainted outside, clutching pictures of Flynn. Defense lawyers painted him as a target of lies, while prosecutors described sordid scenes of smoke-filled apartments and girls far too young. In February 1943, the jury came back, not guilty. Flynn walked free. Outside the courthouse, cigarette in hand, he smirked and allegedly told reporters, "The ladies will still love this Robin Hood." Paul Newman, years later, reflected on that moment. "I had never seen arrogance so naked." Legally cleared, Flynn returned to the screen. But the whispers never stopped. Tabloids wrote of all-night parties at his Mulholland Drive mansion. Servants recalled him forcing guests to sing until he was satisfied, punishing those who resisted with banishment from his circle. Sheila Graham, one of Hollywood's top gossip columnists, wrote in 1945, "If the walls of Errol Flynn's mansion could talk, they would tell stories Hollywood would never want to hear." By the late 1950s, Flynn was in free fall. Alcohol, lawsuits, debts, and fading stardom ate away at him. When he died in Vancouver in 1959, the coroner's report was brutal. Though he was only 50, his body resembled that of a man in his 70s. The New York Post ran the headline, "Robin Hood Dead, Leaves Behind Films and Secrets." Flynn proved that Hollywood's heroes could survive the courtroom, but never outrun the shadows. 2. Joan Crawford, The Crown and the Hangers. March 1946. The Academy Awards glistened as Joan Crawford, dressed in pure satin, accepted her Oscar for Mildred Pierce. Variety celebrated, Hollywood's queen reborn. Photographs captured her radiant smile, clutching the golden statue. To America, she was proof that resilience, talent, and motherhood could live in one woman. But behind the walls of her Brentwood mansion, her children lived a very different story. Christina Crawford revealed it in her searing 1978 memoir, Mommy Dearest. The book described a world of endless control and ritual punishment. Wire hangers, she claimed, became weapons. Ashtrays turned into projectiles. When chores weren't performed to perfection, the consequences were swift and brutal. One maid, later interviewed by the Los Angeles Daily News, recalled that on the very night Crawford won her Oscar, she pulled Christina out of bed, forced her to sing the national anthem, and slapped her when she faltered. Classmates remembered Christina wearing long sleeves in July, whispering that her mother didn't want anyone to see the bruises. The most chilling detail came after Crawford's death in 1977. At the will reading, Christina and her brother Christopher were cut out with a single line, "For reasons which they well know." The Washington Post called it the coldest will in Hollywood history. The memoir set off a cultural earthquake. Some dismissed it as lies. Others confirmed it matched what they had seen. The 1981 film adaptation shocked audiences all over again, turning Crawford's legacy into a battleground between defenders of her stardom and those who believed Christina's truth. Newman said simply, "Never believe that an Oscar can erase the darkness inside a family." Crawford proved that. If Crawford's cruelty shattered her children, Bing Crosby's cruelty shattered Christmas itself. 3. Bing Crosby. A Carol in a Cold House. Bing Crosby was the sound of comfort. His voice, warm and unshakable, defined the holiday season. White Christmas became the best-selling single of all time. On screen, he played priests, soldiers, and fathers with gentle charm. The 1950s media adored him. Life magazine ran spreads of Bing surrounded by his wife and children, calling them America's model family. NBC called him the nation's father. But his eldest son, Gary, told a different story. In his 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, Gary described a home of fear. Nights I clutched my pillow, waiting for the sound of his footsteps. When the door opened, the belt followed. Gary remembered never once being hugged, never once hearing a word of love, only punishment. His brothers echoed the pain. Lindsey Crosby reportedly trembled whenever White Christmas played on the radio. Dennis Crosby, before his tragic death, wrote, "I still hear his growls in my head. I'm too tired." 2 sons ended their lives. The family collapsed under the weight of silence. When Gary appeared on Larry King Live, he broke down recalling the nights of terror. Viewers watched in shock. Could America's Father Christmas truly have been this cold? Psychologists debated whether Bing's harsh upbringing explained his strictness. Newman cut through. Don't blame his childhood. He chose control. He enjoyed it. Hollywood had needed Crosby to stay perfect. And so, for decades, it did. Every December, his voice returned like a ghost of comfort. But for his children, the season meant fear, not joy. If Crosby's cruelty was hidden under carols, Marlene Dietrich's cruelty was hidden under allure. For Marlene Dietrich, the velvet knife. Marlene Dietrich didn't just enter a room, she consumed it. In her tuxedo and smoky eyes, she could silence a crowd with one glance. After The Blue Angel in 1930, she became the goddess of glamour. Mysterious, daring, untouchable. But Newman remembered her differently, not as a goddess, but as a strategist. Her lovers numbered in the dozens. French actor Jean Gabin, considered the love of her life, fell into depression after she discarded him. Writer Éric Maria Remarque, author of All Quiet on the Western Front, was drained of his royalties by her lavish spending. Mercedes d'Acosta, once a powerful Hollywood screenwriter, died destitute after Dietrich abandoned her. Rumors linked her to Greta Garbo, Claudette Colbert, even Edith Piaf. In Piaf's case, friends recalled her collapsing backstage, sobbing that she had been used and discarded. Dietrich's daughter, Maria Riva, revealed in her memoir that her mother treated people like props. Lovers were pieces on a chessboard. Family too. Riva remembered long hours waiting backstage, forgotten as her mother pursued her next conquest. Dietrich's allure made her immortal. But behind her, Newman said, lay only losers. She played human emotion like cards. And she played the game better than anyone. But in the end, she left wreckage. And while Dietrich's weapon was seduction, Mickey Rooney's weakness was the shadow behind his boyish grin. Feather Mickey Rooney, the smile and the shadow. At his peak in the 1930s, Mickey Rooney was the highest-paid actor in the world. MGM's Andy Hardy series made him the boy next door, the symbol of innocence. America adored him. But insiders told another story. On sets, he was volatile. Crew members recalled him throwing props in anger. A technician told the Los Angeles Times he could go from laughter to rage in seconds. The darkest whispers surrounded Elizabeth Taylor. At just 14, After National Velvet, she became MGM's rising jewel. Rooney, nearly 25, was already a superstar. Some of Taylor's friends recalled her discomfort around him. A classmate later said Taylor once gripped her hand and whispered, "I just want to get out of here as quickly as possible." MGM silenced any suggestion of scandal. Rooney was too valuable. Rooney's personal life spiraled into chaos. 8 marriages, some lasting mere months. Gambling debts devoured his fortune. By the 1970s, he was broke, forced to rely on welfare and tiny television roles. Paul Newman summed it up with cutting precision. Hollywood has smiles that hide darkness. Mickey Rooney was proof, but if Rooney left scars, Kirk Douglas left wounds that bled for decades. 6. Kirk Douglas, Spartacus and the rumors that wouldn't die. Kirk Douglas embodied American masculinity. His cleft chin and blazing eyes gave him a warrior's look. His role in Spartacus cemented him as an icon who defied empires. But rumors surrounded him for decades. The most haunting came in Lana Wood's 2020 memoir, Little Sister. She claimed her sister Natalie, at just 15, was assaulted by Douglas during a meeting arranged by their mother at the Chateau Marmont. Natalie reportedly returned distraught, clothes disheveled, whispering that she had to stay silent if she wanted her career. The story remained buried for years. Douglas never faced charges. In his lifetime, he was showered with honors. The Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1996, an honorary Oscar for fans, he was a hero. For those who believed the whispers, he was a predator shielded by power. Paul Newman once said, "Spartacus may have been a hero, but Kirk Douglas was never a hero to the girls he hunted." And if Douglas operated in silence, Bette Davis operated in fire, her fury burning through entire sets. 7. Bette Davis. Brilliance that burned. Bette Davis was a force of nature. Her eyes, her voice, her presence, she could electrify a scene with a single glance. All About Eve made her immortal, her genius undeniable. But with genius came fury. On sets, Davis terrified co-stars and crew alike. A Warner Brothers makeup artist remembered her screaming at a supporting actor for standing slightly off mark. During The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, she slapped Errol Flynn so hard he said it was the most humiliating moment of his career. Her feud with Joan Crawford during Whatever Happened to Baby Jane became legend. In one scene, Davis shoved Crawford with such force, she was hospitalized. Crawford retaliated by hiding weights in her costume, nearly injuring Davis. An assistant director later said, "No one could tell where the acting stopped, and the hatred began." Crew members recalled the dread whenever Davis's heels clicked down the hallway. "It felt like waiting for a storm," one script clerk wrote. Newman observed, "No one denies her brilliance, but brilliance doesn't excuse cruelty." Davis left as many tears as she did awards. If Davis bruised egos, Wallace Beery bruised bodies, and maybe worse. 8. Wallace Beery. The Giant and the Night at the Club. Wallace Beery was one of MGM's biggest stars in the 1930s. His role in The Champ made audiences cry. He was the tough father with a golden heart. But insiders painted a different picture. On December 24, 1937, comedian Ted Healy, founder of the Three Stooges, got into a violent fight outside the Trocadero nightclub. Witnesses claimed a large man resembling Beery threw devastating punches. Hours later, Healy was found dead in his hotel room, his body bruised. 3 days later, MGM arranged for Beery to leave for Europe. The LAPD ruled the death alcohol-related. The case closed, but journalists like Sheila Graham wrote, "Some stars are so big that even the law must step aside." Wallace Beery was one of them. Beyond that night, Beery was infamous for cruelty to children. Mickey Rooney remembered him slapping him so hard he collapsed. Extras flinched when he approached. Families were paid hush money after children were hurt. His ex-wife, Gloria Swanson, described him in her memoir as violent, impossible to live with, and ruled by his fists. Paul Newman summed it up. On screen, Beery played the tender father. Off-screen, he spread terror with his fists. If Beery's violence destroyed lives, Gloria Swanson's vanity destroyed entire productions. 9. Gloria Swanson. The crown that cost a kingdom. Gloria Swanson reigned in the 1920s as the queen of silent film. She arrived at premieres in diamond gowns, trailing fur coats across the floor. Photoplay wrote, "Gloria doesn't act in films, she acts in life itself." But her grandeur consumed everyone around her. In 1928, she starred in Queen Kelly, a lavish production directed by Erich von Stroheim. At first, it promised to redefine cinema, but Swanson's endless demands drained the production. Entire costumes were remade because the color didn't match her eyes. Sets were torn down and rebuilt. Crews collapsed from exhaustion. Costs spiraled out of control. The film collapsed, Stroheim was fired, and hundreds lost their jobs. Swanson's career staggered. Her spending made her infamous during the Great Depression. While millions stood in breadlines, she ordered diamond-encrusted gloves and gold-plated limousines. Critics sneered. Her star dimmed. Only in 1950 did she return, as Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, playing an aging star lost in delusion. Audiences shuddered, realizing the role was not fiction. It was Swanson herself. Newman remarked, "Some believe luxury keeps them at the top, but Hollywood never forgives those who make others suffer for their ego." And if Swanson destroyed productions, Sal Mineo's story showed how Hollywood destroyed people it could not control. 10. Sal Mineo. A promise cut short. Sal Mineo exploded into Hollywood with Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. He was nominated for an Academy Award at just 17. Critics called him the next James Dean, a star who embodied the sensitivity of a new generation. But Hollywood was not ready for him. Mineo was openly gay in an era when that meant exile. Contracts dried up. Headlines mocked him. Roles vanished. Still, he fought to rebuild. He turned to theater, directing and acting with passion. By the mid-1970s, he seemed on the brink of a comeback. Then, on February 12, 1976, tragedy struck. Police arrested Lionel Ray Williams, who confessed to a robbery gone wrong and was convicted. But the case was riddled with contradictions. Missing evidence, clashing witness accounts, theories bloomed. What remains undeniable is the loss. A star with enormous talent, punished by Hollywood long before the knife. Paul Newman reflected, "Hollywood kills with silence, not knives. Silence." Conclusion. The mask of Hollywood. Paul Newman's words stripped away Hollywood's mask. Beneath the flawless posters were children bruised by beatings, young women silenced by fear, crews crushed by egos, and stars punished for honesty. Not every rumor can be proven. Not every story is fair, but the patterns are too strong to ignore. Hollywood protected profits over people. It built legends while burying the truth. Newman didn't ask us to stop watching films. He asked us to see clearly. The movies remain beautiful. The stars remain iconic. But the myths, they were always a lie. So when you see a legend on screen, ask yourself, what did it cost to keep the mask in place? And how many more stories remain in the silence, waiting to be told?